Finally, the time has come to complete our comprehensive class tier list for Unicorn Overlord. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel.
Unicorn Overlord.
Hello everyone. If you enjoy what I do, my coverage of Unicorn Overlord, strategy RPGs, standard RPGs, gaming news, etc., a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. We have technically 12 classes to go through here today, so this should not take very long. However, there are a couple of amendments and statements that I want to make right at the top here. First of all, as a reminder, this tier list is based on how useful I feel each class is in fulfilling its role in a given squad. That is the primary basis upon which I am ranking every class. Some of you have disagreed with a lot of my placements, and that's totally fine. That's totally understandable. However, a lot of those disagreements have been based on criteria that we're not looking at here, that I'm not looking at here. So I just wanted to restate that now. That is the primary metric that we are measuring things on here. Second, a lot of people were saying that I should move the base classes out of the tiers that they are in. Now that the promoted classes are in, I am not going to be doing that. The reason I'm not going to be doing that is because A, some classes actually move down a tier once they promote, because by the time you're using them in their promoted state, they're not as useful as they once were. And two, I want to be able to show where base classes are useful when you get them and are primarily using them as well. So that way people who might be looking at this in the future have an idea of, hey, okay, well, this class is really good early in the game. Maybe it falls off a little bit later, but I can use it for now or whatever, you know? So I'm not going to be changing that. Third, I will be doing any sort of reorganizing at the end of this episode. So if there's something that I feel needs to move up, needs to move down, I will review the whole tier list and we will make those adjustments accordingly. And finally, Swordmaster is the exception here. When I made the previous entry of the tier list, Swordmaster was bad, and I maintain that. I don't care if it had a good, like, parry evade build. Half of its entire kit was about dealing damage, and it was bad at doing that. However, we got the recent patch that made it so that Swordmasters and also Valkyria get half of the bonus of their secondary weapon or shield. And that has made Swordmaster far, far better. So I'm going to actually move them preemptively up 2 tiers from D to B. They kind of fall into the, get out of here, GeForce Experience in-game overlay. We're not in a game. Go away. Shoo. Shoo. There we go. They still are just fine. They're not bad anymore by any means. But much like Warlock, they are really good at dealing damage in certain scenarios. Just like Legionnaires, they're really good at being tanks, quote-unquote, in certain scenarios. But I don't think that they're as versatile or useful as the A-rank classes, and they are certainly not an S-rank class. They're way better than they were before. I like them far more now than I used to. They are actually useful. B tier is perfectly middle of the road, perfectly fine. But don't think they can go any higher than that. Also, finally, again, due to kind of scheduling issues and everything, this tier list is probably going to be out prior to the actual class overview video that this is supposed to be a companion piece to. Just the way things have worked out with scripting and recording and editing and everything, I think this is going to wind up coming out before that. So, as per usual, you can find the class overview in the description of this video once it goes out, and then this will be linked in the class overview video as well. Okay. Housekeeping done. Let's get into this here with the Werewolf. Werewolf is, I think, similar to Swordmaster, a very solid middle-of-the-road B-tier class. I really like them aesthetically. I like the way that they play. I like the whole, like, getting stronger as enemies' HP goes down or there's fewer enemies on the board, all that type of good stuff. And I do like that they have a pretty damn strong row attack that deals really good damage. However, they do need support and setup to be as effective as they can be, and they do have a little bit of an issue of being a win more, again, to borrow some Magic terminology, a win more class, because they become the best when you're already winning. So if you're in the point where you're already winning, you might not necessarily need that extra push. Maybe you do. Maybe you do need that little bit of an extra push to take it from just wounding an enemy squad to outright destroying an enemy squad. That's entirely possible. But it's not as useful as it could be. That said, I also don't think that they are as bad as people make them out to be. I certainly don't think they're the worst class in the game. Their boosts that they get at nighttime are phenomenal, including that speed boost that puts them pretty strong when you're using them at night. And I've used werewolves to great effect. I have a werewolf in my Lex kind of all-rounder team that I recently showed off a video for. And he does very well. Like, he was even shredding Feathershields. So not a bad class by any means. I do like them quite a bit. So I think B rank is exactly where they need to be. No pun intended. Werefoxes. Werefoxes are an interesting one. I don't have as much experience with them as I would like, but my inclination is to put them in A tier. They kind of fall into that same category of class as like your Swordmasters, your Rogues. Swordmaster isn't a scout class, but they still have that dodgy, parry sort of effect going on that Rogues have, and then now Werefoxes have as well, where you are evading a lot of attacks, you have abilities to let you evade attacks on top of just having naturally really good evade, things like that. But I feel Werefoxes are just better at the whole evasion thing than Swordmasters are, and they're also better at dealing damage and spreading around status effects, in my opinion, or at least in a more useful way than Rogues are. So I know it's rough having Rogues all the way down in C, but I don't like the way they play once you get to the point where you're using a lot of promoted classes. Whereas Werefoxes, like, the amount of times that I've just had a Werefox sitting on the front line and the whole rest of her squad is gone and she's just still trucking along, dodging every single attack, poisoning everything, blinding everything, dealing good damage. Like, I'm very impressed with the class. Absolutely. I do like it more than Werewolf. I think it has more utility than Werewolf. I think it's a lot easier to throw a Werefox into the front line of a squad and just have it pop off. So, not an S tier class by any means. I don't know that any of the best rules really are, as much as I do really like them. And I do think that they are better than their contemporaries, their human contemporaries, in a lot of ways. But the fact that they do need the nighttime boost, well, they don't need it, but they're at their max potential only half of the time, and that can be limiting for them. But then when they are at that max potential, they are disgusting. So, yeah, I think A is a good spot for Werefox. I really enjoy them. Werebears. These are also A tier, and I know people are going to fight me on this one, but, like, dude. Anyone who has seen my streams who knows Antonio the Werebear, that absolute unit of a bear has tanked such an unholy amount of damage and then clapped back for really good damage in turn. Cements my love for them. I do think they're really, really good. The thing that I like so much about Werebear over something like Legionnaire, and why I think that they deserve to be a slot higher than Legionnaire, is the fact that even though they don't have their own like built-in row protection necessarily, they're still able to protect their allies. You can give them a shield that is going to give them extra protection skills as well, and they're just as, if not more, tanky than Legionnaires are. However, they also have the benefit of kind of being half Berserker, so they actually have a lot of good high-damage AoE attacks that makes it so they're more than just a wall. Like, when you need nothing but the biggest wall possible, then yeah, you're going to want a Legionnaire. That's why I like having a Legionnaire for my Super Tax Bros squad, because he's, like, immovable, especially since I have one of the Super Tax Bros with a magic shield that he can put on the Legionnaire if there's a mage. Werebears aren't quite that durable, but seeing as how you really only in very certain situations want to have an entire slot taken up by something that's essentially doing 0 damage, having a Werebear actually being able to deal not just damage, but like pretty good damage, that's a huge boon for me. Absolutely. I do think that Werebears are very, very strong. Moving on to Wereowls. This one is one that I was really kind of debating. I was everywhere from B to S with Wereowls, because they just have so much versatility with them. The fact that they can wield staves means you can use a whole bunch of different types of support builds with them. Being a flying healer gives a ton of utility, especially if you're moving around at night, have them as your squad leader. They've got a nice array of support abilities just built into their kit as well. Defensive stuff, healing stuff, etc. I do really like them. However, I think they're going to fall in B tier. That's kind of where I'm feeling now at the end of the day, because I do like having something that is just going to do more dedicated healing, like, say, having Bishop in A tier. Wereowls, you need to build them a little bit more specifically to do that, and you do have other ways of dealing with the types of problems that Wereowl are going to deal with for you as well. Like, things like Elven Archer can compete with Wereowl for certain facets of what they can do, all that type of stuff. Now, what's nice is you can kind of take the roles of Elven Archer and its support capacities, Bishop and its support capacities, and roll them together into Wereowl. And where you're going to use that, it's going to be very, very nice. But then you have the added issue of, like, well, they're also a flyer, so they can get sniped. They're going to get chunked really hard by things like ranged assist and things like that. So, man, I don't know. It doesn't... No, they're going to go to A tier. They're going to go to A tier. Absolutely. My initial... I'm so conflicted on it. I do think they fall in A tier, actually, thinking about it, because they do have so much that they can do. And that is my biggest thing with this tier list, is like, what utility does a class bring to the table and how well does it fulfill that role? And Wereowl does fulfill its role really, really well. It just has a little bit of a split role, which is kind of a running theme with all the Bestial units. But I think it does perform that role really well. It doesn't reach S tier, but it is good. It is very good, and so I think it does fall in A tier. Maybe I'll wind up changing that by the time we do our wrap-up, but we'll see. Moving on from the Bestrels. Well, actually, no, wait, not moving on from the Bestrels. I messed up my order of things. We have Snow Ranger and Werelion yet. Okay. Snow Ranger, easy S tier. Like, there's no even trying to get around that, man. Like... Snow Ranger is so hysterically busted, from its damage output to its freeze capabilities, how dodgy it is. It can do anything. It's happy being in any squad. Sorry about that if you noticed the jump there. Our devastatingly loud AC came on while I was recording, and that would have thrown off the whole vibe. So yeah, there's just any squad that's built around Snow Ranger to make use of its capabilities to the max, especially some sort of freeze squad, is just ridiculously dumb. So yeah, there's really not even anything else that I have to say about it. Things like triple counter, AoE freezes, good damage output, dodginess. Snow Ranger has it all. She's phenomenal. Easy S tier. No doubt about that. Now, Werelion. Werelion is an interesting one because it is literally just Berserker but better, because it gets nighttime Bestial bonuses. Other than that, it is the exact same class, and on its face, since I have Berserker in A tier, my initial gut reaction would be to put it in S tier, but I don't think that that's valid. I don't think that that's valid because I don't think the Bestial bonus is enough to take what Berserker does and say that it's S tier. I don't think that I can do that. It's certainly not B tier. Like, it's nowhere near B tier. So we're just going to put Werelion right next to Berserker in A tier. There's really nothing else that I can say about it beyond that. Like, if you want to use a Berserker and you only have room for one in your army, then just from a pure gameplay power perspective, it is the objectively correct decision to swap out your Berserker for Mirard the Werelion and then never look back. Now, that said, I think you can absolutely have room for multiple Berserkers in an army, but that's a different conversation. So, Werelion, A tier, for all the same reasons that we discussed with Berserker, plus it gets Bestial nighttime bonuses, which is awesome. Now we can move on to our feather units, starting with the Feathersword. Feathersword is an interesting one. I really like feather swords. However, they have this weird situation that they fall into where they really need their buffs, because to actually deal really good damage, they need to be able to consume those buffs for their big triple strike attack that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. Something with like re-energize, recharge, something. I don't remember what it is. But they need that to be able to deal really good damage to finish things off. They deal okay damage if they don't have that, especially if they start comboing a bunch of like shield bashes together. But there's stuff that deals better damage for your frontline sword and board, kind of tanky, kind of dodgy, kind of damage dealer build. So I don't think they fall in C tier at all, because they are actually very versatile, and the debuffs that they can spread around, the damage that they can deal is really solid, but I don't think I can put them any higher than B tier. Like, they are kind of niche, kind of limited in a lot of ways. They really want something that's going to be able to give them other buffs other than just themselves that they can then consume for different effects, all that type of stuff. Like, B tier feels right. B tier absolutely feels right. They are very solid units. I'm happy to have them in a squad, but they're more limited than I would like to be able to put them in a higher tier. Now, feather bows. Featherbow for the blind alone goes in S tier. Like, no question. I know there's going to be people who gripe and moan about, oh, you have too many classes in S tier. When everything's S tier, nothing is in S tier. First of all, there's more stuff in all the other tiers than there is in S tier. First of all. Second of all, it's my tier list, and I'm going to do what I want. And there's a lot of really good classes in Unicorn Overlord, so deal with it, Scrublords. Featherbow just for the blind is already an S tier class. Then combine that with the fact that it is an archer, so it's going to be able to snipe other flyers with ease. It has other debuffs. It has good single target damage. It has good dual target damage. It can fly, so it can be a flying squad leader to be able to ferry things around terrain. It's got ranged assist and has good physical damage to make use of that ranged assist. Featherbows are just a phenomenal unit. They're quite possibly my favorite archer in the game. I know it's a little bit of a lofty thing to say when there's things like shield shooters out there, but like, Featherbows are just so sick, man. Like, and I know we're not judging things based on design here and everything, but I love the Featherbow design. I love the whole idea of their kit as this support archer, but like an offense support archer as opposed to the more defense of shield shooter or healing and buff resistance of elven archer. Like, Featherbows are just so cool. Easy S tier, just for the blind alone, as anyone can tell you who walks into Albion for the first time and suddenly they need to change all of their strats. So yeah, don't even, like, don't at me over this choice, all right? Featherbows are S tier. I will hear none of it. Now, Feather Staves. I am really sad to do this to them, but I think Feather Staves are a C tier unit. Like, of all of the healing support staff units in the game, Feather Staves are the least impactful to me. They are good at what they do. I like the fact that they can give you the ability to just survive a lethal attack. They have the benefit of being a staff unit, so all those different good utility staves that have unique abilities on them or abilities from other classes on them you can use here, and that's really nice. They do fly, but in a lot of ways they're kind of competing with Wereowl for that type of flying staff user role, and a lot of what their kit does is kind of planning for defeat. Like, expecting to be losing and then giving you a way to avoid that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing to have in your back pocket, but as their kind of defined niche beyond just the general healing that pretty much all support stave users can do, it's the weakest niche to have, in my opinion. It's preventative to the extreme. And while, yes, they'll definitely be able to keep things alive, the overheal can be nice, the resurrections can be nice, you can do that with other classes that the main identity of them isn't also, but what if we're about to die? I won't complain about having a Featherstaff. It's compared to having some of our other C rank things here, like, it never hurts to have a good support unit in the back line, just something that can toss some heals your way. But I like it to be able to do other stuff beyond just stopping us from dying literally outright. Yes, the last hit point is the only one that matters in a lot of cases, but if we never have to get to that point in the first place, then that feels better to me. So, yeah, I think it's got to be C tier. Feathershields. I'm really high on Feathershields. Like, I'm really high on Feathershields. I think Feathershields are dope. They're quite possibly my favorite tanking class in the game. Because, like, you think about it, a Feathershield can do pretty much everything that a Legionnaire can, while also not folding to magic, because it's way easier to buff physical defense over magical defense. They're flying, so they can help with your terrain navigation. They have the ability to actually completely reflect spells and prevent debuffs by turning them back on things and everything. Like, that's really nice. They can block any attack because of sacrifice. Yeah, there's certain things that Legionnaire, again, is going to do better. Legionnaire is the undisputed physical damage wall, and that's going to be the majority of damage that you're dealing with. But it's really easy to make Feathershields really tanky in both physical and magical. Do I think that they can fall in S tier? I don't, because again, they're not really going to be dealing damage. And if you're not fighting something that has magic damage, then a lot of their kit just doesn't trigger. However, I do still think that they're better than Legionnaires, so I'm going to put them in A tier. I really like the fact that Feathershields have such a wide range of defensive capabilities, much wider than a Legionnaire has, and you can still make it so that they can jump in the way of allies and protect them. So, yeah, it's got to be A tier for Feathershield. It can't be S tier, and I can't put them in B tier because I do think they're better than Legionnaires. So, yeah, A tier is where it's going to sit. Dreadnought. Dreadnought. I have mixed feelings about Dreadnought because, obviously, like, Amalia's sheer presence lends a lot of the reputation to the class, and, like, just the sheer imposing size and the brutality of the attacks and everything. However, is it S tier? Like, actually? I don't know. Because it almost feels like Dreadnought is happier fighting alone than with a squad. And it is really strong, but it kind of just slaps. I don't know, because you're not getting the insane raw damage output of a Great Knight. You're not getting absolutely massive mixed magical and physical damage like with a Doom Knight. You're not getting massive AoE status effect infliction suppression like with something like Snow Ranger. You're not getting the raw versatility of something like a Valkyria. It's not flying with all the self-healing huge damage of a Griffin Master, the raw devastating overwhelming debuffs of a Druid. Like, there's a lot of things in S tier that I think deserve to fit there, and I don't know that Dreadnought reaches that lofty height. They're not bad. It's not a bad class at all. But I don't know. I was less impressed by it than I expected to be. Possessed Amalia, Possessed Dreadnought, completely different story, obviously. That would be a completely different scenario. But regular Dreadnought, I think, is just A tier. Yeah, this is possibly the least solid opinion for me out of this whole list. So I do invite people to discuss in the comments what you think of Dreadnought specifically. But it just doesn't feel like a must-use. It doesn't feel like it has the level of versatility that I like. And it fulfills its role fine. But its very nature makes it feel like it's not really a team player class. And I do think that takes some points off when everything else here is like, how does it fit into the team? You know? So, yeah, I think I'm going to sit with an A for Dreadnought, at least for the moment. We'll do a final pass here and see what the final results are. But we'll move on for the moment. The last technically three classes we have are the other three classes of Dark Marquess, since you do get them at the end of the game. Once you finish the campaign, you can do your final mission and unlock them all and everything. And I mean, they've got different levels of effectiveness, sure, but I don't think there's any disputing that literally every Dark Marquess class is S tier. Like, they're all just so devastatingly strong in their own ways. And even though I would argue that Sword and Board Dark Marquess, Nigel's class, is probably the weakest out of the three, it's still devastatingly powerful. Like, any squad that has a Dark Marquess in it is immediately more capable just for their sheer presence. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Like, all four Dark Marquess classes are phenomenal. They cannot be anywhere other than S tier. Now, as for the rest of the classes that we have down here, a lot of them are either duplicates. Like, I had one version, male or female, of the class on the tier list. I left the other version off just to not clutter things up. That's largely what these all are. And then there's a couple of enemy-only classes, Necromancer, Dark Lord, Overlord, that we can't use. So I'm not going to rank them, because why would I do that? So now, we have our list. What could potentially be changed here? We'll just go through here really, really quick. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time debating it with myself. I'm just going to quick go through and see what I think. Lord, absolutely S tier. More than happy to have it early in the game. Soldier makes any squad better. Like, definitely a great class. Housecarl, phenomenal for its damage outputs. Phenomenal for its defense reduction. Thief, insane evade tank. Like, no questions asked. Cleric is great support. Witch is a great mix of support and damage. Shaman is just dumb. It's just gross. Radiant Knight, also just dumb with how strong it is supporting and then also being a good cavalry unit. All four Dark Marquess classes obviously are not moving. Crusader. Crusader is the first one that I think I'm going to bump down. Because, yeah, Virginia is, like, really good when you get her. But she doesn't have as many pieces of the kit that she has once she's Valkyria that make her truly, truly disgusting. She's still really good, don't get me wrong. She's going to go to A tier, but there are other classes that I prefer to have earlier in the game over Crusader. Like, there's squads that she is absolutely really good in. Like, she's happy to be in pretty much any squad, but there's pieces of her kit missing that I think bring her down a little bit, even early in the game. So, A tier for Crusader. We're not moving Valkyria. Don't worry. We'll get to that. Prince is, I think, just S tier because any squad is happy to have the buffs. But Elven Augur and Sybil, yeah, we know are just completely disgusting. High Lord also ridiculous. Sergeant, I think I'm going to move down a tier. While Soldier is really, really good early on, there's a lot more competition for that sort of damage dealy, sort of supporting type of thing that Sergeant has going on, especially because later in the game it leans far more into the buff a particular type of character or one particular character in their squad. And to me, that is a little bit more niche combo-y. And so while they still have great utility, great versatility, there's a lot of competition for that slot, and it brings down their quality a little bit, I would say. Shield Shooter is great. I'm always happy to have a Shield Shooter. They're just so friggin' versatile. Great Knight is disgusting. Sainted Knight is disgusting. Doom Knight is disgusting. All three of those major cavalry classes are just phenomenally powerful. I don't think they deserve to be anywhere else. Sorceress, I think, is also still good to be in S tier just because their combo potential, the freeze, the buffs, all that type of good stuff. Same thing for Druid. Griffin Master's gross. Valkyria is gross. Snow Ranger, Featherbow. Yeah, I think these are good. I think these are good. And again, like, people are going to say, well, the fact that Snow Ranger is the best class in the game means that all these other classes shouldn't be up here. Listen, if this was like you can only bring 8 to 12 units, like a Fire Emblem situation, and each unit is one class, then we'd have to be a lot pickier. However, one Snow Ranger does not an army make. All of these classes have their own utility and versatility that they bring to the table, and the ones that are really good at it deserve to be in S tier because you need to have a lot of different classes to be able to build effective squads. Period. End of discussion. There's nothing else that can be said about it. So, one particularly busted unique class does not completely invalidate other classes from being S tier. Boom. A. Paladin, I think, is happy to stay where it is. It's just kind of a slightly less versatile Sainted Knight, regular Knight, Gladiator, Wizard. I'm fine with where they are in... Am I actually? My feelings on Wizard have kind of cooled a bit, if we're being perfectly honest. I'm going to bump Wizard down to B. Witch does so much, man. It really overshadows Wizard in a lot of ways. Yeah, I think Wizard's getting bumped down to B. Arbalist, I think, is fine where it is. I almost want to bump Gladiator down to B as well. But they're so hard to deal with early in... No. It's fine where it is. It's fine where it is, yeah. They're so hard to deal with early in the game. They deal, like, some of the best sweep damage. It's fine. They're fine where they are. Arbalist is good for its support capability still. Priestess is good. I think Priestess and High Priestess are both good to stay in A. May as well move them next to each other for the sake of it. Elven Fencer, I think, is absolutely A tier. Does not deserve to be moved down at all. Don't think it's quite S tier, despite what other people will say. Vanguard, absolutely an A tier class. Like, such a good tank class. Viking is phenomenal. Lance Connect, obviously phenomenal. Berserker, Werelion, Bishop, Wyvern Master, all that type of good stuff. Yeah, I think A tier is good the way that it is. Wyvern Master, Werefox, Werebear, Wereowl. I feel happy with the Were classes that we put in A. I do. They feel fine where they are. Feathershield, I still almost want to be able to move up to S tier, but that's personal bias that I'm going to avoid because I just think the class is cool. I do think they're an A tier class, though. Yeah, I think we're good here. Fighter, going down to B tier. Fighter, absolutely a B tier class. It's a very, very solid class. Very middle of the road, which is exactly where it wants to be with B tier. Absolutely fine. Hunter, I actually think I want to move up a tier. In the early game, Hunter is so important. It's so strong. Being able to snipe flyers, being like the only thing that can deal with flyers for you, and there's plenty of flyers. being a good damage dealer, having versatility with things like the poison and fire bows. Yeah, I think that definitely deserves to be A tier. Hunter deserves to be A tier for sure. Sellsword and Dark Knight, I think I'm perfectly happy to have in B tier. They really need their promoted class kit to come online before they're particularly good. Elven Archer. Elven Archer. I mean, just pure field alone makes them pretty good. Yeah, I should probably bump them up to A tier. I've warmed up to Elven Archers quite a bit since I first started using them. I still don't think that they're the strongest units around, much like I don't feel that Elven Fencers are the strongest units around, but they are definitely good. They're definitely good. Pure Field is great. Being able to set up like a post-battle AoE heal with the whole first aid kit Elven Archer combo to be able to guarantee heal the entire team, that's really nice. Magical effect arrows are good. Yeah, A tier feels better for Elven Archer. And then everything else here I think is good. Legionnaire, solid B tier. Wizard and Warlock I think are both B tier. Wizard should be moved up here just for consistency. Swordmaster we just moved up to B. I'm happy with that. Werewolf and Feathersword I'm also happy with being in B. Now, C tier. Hoplite Warrior and Swordfighter are all happy where they are. Not super impressive early in the game. I do like fighters better than hoplites for most scenarios in the early game. Warrior really wants breaker skills to come online. I'm not super impressed with them early in the game. And Swordfighter is just fine. Like, Swordfighter, you could maybe make an argument for B tier, but by the time you get them, like, you've got other good damage dealers as well. Like, yeah, they can kind of snipe stuff preemptively. Not super valuable to me, so. Sniper and Rogue, definitely the classes that fell off the most for me. I don't think I need to move them out of C. I'm totally fine with them where they are. Definitely saw the least use out of all the human promoted classes for me. And then Featherstaff, I think, is the bottom of the barrel for healing units. Like, it's still good as a healing unit, but compared to the other healers, I don't think it deserves to be anything higher than C tier. So, and that, my friends, is the end of the comprehensive class overview tier list for Unicorn Overlord. I may wind up coming back to this one more time after we've cleared our Truz and Neuron challenge run to see how I feel about some of these classes by the end of the game. I'm going to tell you right now, the way that that run has been going thus far, I feel rock solid about my unpromoted classes. We are 2/3 of the way through Drakenhold at the moment, at the time of this recording in that run, and that feels perfectly fine. All of the classes have been performing exactly as I expected that they would from what past experience has been with them. So all the base classes are going to be fine. The non-human classes and the promoted classes, that's where things are going to get interesting. That might be worth kind of reconfiguring this just in general, or maybe for a specific Truz and Neuron list. We'll have to see. So I do think we'll be doing that at the end of that run. But this is good. This is good. I feel very happy with this list. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of spirited discussion in the comments. A lot of people acting like I'm the absolute most, like, heinously lunatic person to ever create a tier list. That's fine. You know, shoot your shot. Let it out. I'll take it. I'll clap back, too. Y'all know that. But let me know what your thoughts are here. If you would move some things up or down, if you feel like something's being over-evaluated, mis-evaluated, all that type of stuff, do let me know. It is curious, or I'm always curious to see that discussion. And this has been a fun time. So look for the class overview, last episode of that coming soon. Plenty more other Unicorn Overlord, Aiden Chronicles, all that type of stuff, all that content still on the horizon, and more streams as well. But until then, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. I do very much appreciate it. I hope that you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.